So at some point, all this stuff is going to be posted up as a podcast. I'll push it out through the Squirrels feed. I'm going to need from the two of you some idea of what kind of music you'd like for the. I'm not going to throw down, you know, live from Chasing Squirrel. Like, there's not going to be a bumper. It's going to be as sort of unintrusive as possible. So we get through like intro music. Maybe I'll put up a still of Tina Zita's OCT picture, like this. Oh wait, dude, we just have
I have it. Like, it's gonna be here all night.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. Yep. So yeah. So at some point, I'll need to get what your music interests are, and I'll see if I can find something that works as some intro music. Because, you know, a lot of people are going to listen to this after we're done. It's important to celebrate our learning.
If you say so.
So, Catherine, start us off. Otherwise, I'm going to have some ridiculous story that it's just going to suck up too much of your time.
Okay. So, it's kind of funny because as I'm reading this, the first chapter about the essential intent, I was like, I got to the end of the chapter and I was like, wait, where's the help for me to make my essential intent? And then I was thinking about, like, does everything have to be essential? You know, I think about even this past weekend, and I'm like, I've been listening to the Greatest Showman soundtrack on repeat, and I love it so much. And I'm like, I think back to sort of even in the what would be in like my realm of essential, and I don't think that the Greatest Showman soundtrack is essential, but I like love it and I find so much joy from it. And so do we parse those things out of our lives, or, you know, like, to what degree do we only do things that are essential versus doing things that we just want to do?
Would that be his debate, though, that what sparks you joy should be essential?
It's like, I feel like
I don't think it's that easy, but I think that's kind of the argument the book kind of weaves through, is you only do the things that make not make you happy, but that maybe it's the Mary Kondo, what's her name?
Yeah, Mary Kondo. Yeah.
She was on Instagram live stories today, so maybe that's all I'm stuck with. And when she packed her backpack with all of the stickers and the washi tape, I'm just like, where's all the cables for the computer that you need to take with you? But I guess that's what I'm stuck with, is that picture that I know they brought up the closet cleaning again in the opening for the eliminate section. So I guess that's what's stuck in my head. Is that really the piece that he's saying? Is that those little things are important?
Let me push the devil's advocate, though. So what you're observing, Catherine, I get. I love the philosophical playfulness of it. But if I were to sort of kind of come back at it and say, I don't think we're designed to live essentially. Like, I think we've really stepped away from that. Like, in the abstract and in the actual. I think it actually, when people start a statement like, well, what am I supposed to do? Get rid of everything? You know what I mean? They sort of do the hands up statement. Well, how do I get to this idea of being essential? That they actually haven't tried. I do honestly believe that. Like, there isn't actually a test or a bit of evidence that they're playing against. It's the discomfort, the perceived discomfort of sort of moving into that space. And then the hands go up and like, well, you know, what am I supposed to do? Or what do you expect of me? And it's funny, this section, I think we said last time that this is the section where it gets hard, right? This is the one where you're reading it, and one of the things that popped out of it, I won't quote page numbers. Well, no, I can't. I can tell you what page number it is on mine, but it's somewhere around, I don't know. I'm going to go way too far back. I'm not going to be able to find the dang thing. Oh, chapter 10, which I think is actually the previous section. But it's the idea that essentialism gives you a sweet peek at when you could actually be done something. It sets these, well, it mentions it in here as well, that somehow by setting the boundaries, you actually liberate yourself from things. Now, I would say it's probably liberating you from inessential things. It's funny how, you know, I looked over and I have this thing here. So this is the stupid dongle bag, right? With all the little bits. Like, it's a nightmare here, my desk. It's an absolute nightmare the way it's set up. And somehow I've made it work. But I would say there's crap on this desk that actually is I will say it honestly is a distraction from what I'm actually trying to get done. Like this, you know. So there's a little tchotchke that my kids made, Dad's stash. You know, for some reason I have some micro tools right here. I don't know. It just, I think that often when we say the moving towards essentialism is partnered with what am I supposed to do, kind of give up everything, I wonder whether or not it's actually been test driven. And the quote that kind of got me thinking about this, and I've been playing with it sort of just within my classroom as well. I think I mentioned this at the tail end of our last, the idea of scarcity is, and we actually don't have endless resources and endless opportunity with education. It's actually quite a privileged position to assume that we do, that we can keep on doing things the way that we are doing them. Because I think there's a lot of waste generated. Not like Rob Ford's thinking. Oh, sorry, Doug Ford. Which one is it?
Doug
I
Ford.
don't know.
Doug.
The Ford Nation. Regardless of how you feel about that, but it's that idea that that there are boundaries, that scarcity does exist, that I don't know if we often push ourselves to look at the work that we do in that way, because it is kind of uncomfortable. And that trying to get to an end is a really interesting, you want philosophical, Catherine, when will you be done being a teacher? You know, what is the end for you as a teacher? Same with you, Zita. What is the end? Like, do we know what our end is? Will we have a set of accomplishments that we can say, this is what our intent was in teaching, and I did it. Time for the next.
I think that's why the section on goals.
Sorry.
No. It's adorable. Those are the essential moments. Forget about this chat. I think there were a couple points where they talked about having that essential goal or that vision, and that under the next in this chapter when he said clarifying and the difference between pretty clear and really clear, right? I think that was like, I can tell you what I believe or why I came into education and that whole philosophy of education that I posted up. But I don't know if it was really clear. And I don't know what to give up. Like, there was a quote there under essential intent where it said, one strategic choice eliminates a universe of other options and maps a course for the next 5, 10, or even 20 years of your life. Go to bed. And you're like, I don't know if I want to do that.
Why not?
I don't plan anything 5, 10, 15, 20 years out.
Why not? What's at the core? What's at the core of that?
Because I wouldn't be where I am today if I had planned it out.
Oh,
see that?
No, there's a paradox in there. You can't. You have no way to prove that.
I have one. Like, I don't think I would have ever taken the leadership pathway. That I know for sure.
Okay.
And not even the big L leadership pathway. That sounds very weird. Sorry. Anyways, you guys get what I'm saying.
I was like, I think that was one thing I was wondering was like, where is the line between knowing what your essential thing is and being open to some different opportunities, right? Because I think depending on how broad your essential intent is, that would, you know, preclude you from saying yes to certain things that maybe would lead down a different path. And I don't know. I don't like. And do people's essential intents change throughout life? Like, do you have that essential intent forever? Like,
but how would you know unless you did it? See, this is the paradox. Of course, our priorities are going to change. Wrong word, but of course, it's, you can be even in the same classroom for 25 years teaching the same course, whether you're intentionally driving your own bus or the bus is changing you. There's going to be stuff that shifts around you. But I think where this book pushes me is with deliberate moves, paying attention to that. And if possible, making a decision for yourself. Because I don't think you would know. I don't think you would have any idea about what got you to where you are, what got me to where I am right now. Because I haven't been really I haven't been living my teacher life with intent. Zita, I've been doing like you. Like I opportunize what's in front of me. I'll say that. I do. I put my interest in this work. Like, am I interested? Am I happy in the forefront? And that can sort of cause a lot of dissonance, like not constant, but sudden zigzag in my career. And I've kind of done that. Like I haven't, there's been no straight path for me through teaching. None. Could be the ADHD too. I gotta be honest. So
then I wonder
even as I'm saying it right now, like it could be that as well.
So I feel like I wonder if, somebody had an essential intent that made it so that they could make those sort of pivots and it wasn't tied necessarily to what they were doing. I don't know.
It's a funny thing because this, we do our ALPs.
Yes.
And the whole process of ALP is a rather abstract process. And I would love to meet, who is it? I wish I could conjure this dude's name. I think I mentioned him before. The guy that he has kept every single one of his picture ID cards from every year that he's been teaching. I think he's been teaching, I don't know, 20, 22 years. And he posted a picture of them all. Geez, I wish I could remember his name. Like, that's intent. Like, that's a plan. You say to yourself, I'm going to post something like this up. And I would love to, it kind of in the spirit of that, I would love to talk with somebody that came into teaching and sort of said to themselves somewhere in their brain, I would like to be a superintendent one day. And, and made that happen. Like with intent, made that happen. And then be able to sort of recall, I did this, I did this, I did this. Like their pursuit in education, it wasn't, roll the dice like you and me, Zita, and just sort of taking it and roll, like going for it, right? It was somebody that said, I'm going to make this happen, and they did.
So I actually had, I have a friend who connected me with one of her students, and that was actually his intent. He's finishing up his degree right now, but he is planning on coming back to Canada, and he's like, I'd like to be a superintendent. What do I need to do? And then I directed him to the OCT page that had all of the requirements because I didn't know anything about becoming a superintendent.
But see, this is a piece with essentialism that is how do you, like, how do we make sure that the moral imperative of education does not get altered by our intent and pathways? Do you get what I'm saying?
Drop me what you perceive to be the overarching moral imperative of education right now. Hit me with that.
And now I feel guilty because it's going to be pretty clear and not really clear. And all emotional and not measurable and all those things we read in the chapters. I think it's that opening line in all of the documents that talks about students being contributing citizens to society. I know, there's still that piece. Our intent should not be affecting and I think that's the one piece that I struggle with this book. If everybody says no, nothing gets done, right? Like they talk about the manager,
yes,
that finally had to do the work herself and then came to her senses. that just as easily could be that she fired everybody and started fresh. Like, I guess there's, like a lot of times people can choose what's essential to them, but there's still not fun stuff that has to get done.
You're talking about the practicality of being an essentialist.
Yeah. And I know he talks about that the no is not as easy as the words on a page. Yeah, he's very clear about that.
And he gives us some crib sheets on how to do it. And it's funny, as I read the list, I'm like, yeah, that's all the sort of euphemistic-y kind of stuff that I've heard lots of educators say. But I don't hear the one which I think is most essential is just the no thank you. I don't hear that one too often. I've seen all those other side shifty ones that, okay, maybe they're kind. I don't know. Are they kind? You know, soft no, they'll let me check my calendar. You know, like.
But it's weird because in one chapter he says, don't really let your no be no. And then in the next chapter,
I know, like, I was a little confused with that.
Tell them you'll check your calendar, and you're kind of like, what? Did anybody else notice that one? Or maybe it was just.
I think it's funny. They get that list gets stronger in the second half. Because I think that the second half speaks, I think it's the stuff, going back to Catherine, what you were saying about that, when we're talking in the beginning about testing what is essential without sort of throwing your hands up and saying, what am I supposed to do? Thinking that it's the idea of a zero sum, that it has to be all, hey buddy, yeah, it has to be all, for those of you listening to this at some point, we just had a little visitor peek in the. I'm learning real quick that sometimes podcasting, the visuals don't always translate through. But so back to what I was saying, like the idea that we don't always have the evidence that suggests we know what we're talking about. So I like the second half of that list because it says, it speaks to the tension that's actually existing there. So, and I won't say the page, but like it's a list of 6 or 7 or 8 ways to say no, or to sort of create the context that no is a possibility. There's no assumption of yes. And I like the, saying yes, and what should I deprioritize in order to get that thing done that you're asking for right now? Or sure, say it with humor. That's always kind of fun. I like the other one. You're welcome to X. I am willing to Y. So you sort of create at least the two poles of that kind of might get that best negotiated outcome, but it also suggests that I'm kind of really good doing this thing here. This is kind of what you want. I don't know if I'm not going to provide what you're necessarily asking for, but I'm awesome at doing this thing. Would you want this thing? And I think he reinforces that with that story about the designer for Steve Jobs' company when he whatever, and basically the dude going to Steve Jobs and say, now this is Steve Jobs before he was really Steve Jobs. He was probably a little bit more open, right? Because then he was later on in his Apple tenure. But that idea of a designer being asked to put out, 100 possibilities for a new design, and then, putting out all that work and not really understanding what the end is or what the destination is, hoping that one of those 100 items are going to land the thing that your client is asking for. And the dude pushes back and says, no, I'm going to do one. I'm going to take into everything account. I'm going to take into account everything you've asked for. And I'm going to give you the best possible version of what I can produce. You're going to pay for it because you're paying for my work. And then you can decide whether or not you want to use it. And, that worked out. Right?
They're all very, the word's not the right word coming to mind. But they're very extreme cases. They're very confident people and I know he articulates that as well. But I don't know how many, even in all my confidence, and I lie, I'm not always that confident. But even in the place that I find myself in now, where there's been some parts of my job where I've invested enough that I think I could question, I don't think I could ever word things the way that some of those stories are worded.
Do you wonder? I wonder, like, do you feel there's a particular point in your career in which you can, like, going back to this idea of, like, can you sort of can you afford to be an essentialist when you are, I guess, like lower on the totem pole? I don't know.
I think it's also like there's a lot about the culture of a place of work.
Yeah.
But it's also, and he mentions it, I think, in some of the chapters, are you willing to pay the price if they don't respond positively, right? But maybe that comes back to earlier on in the book, right? When they say that we sometimes hold on to jobs because, and that came up in future chapters here too, right? The, what was it called? The bias, the sunk-in bias. What was it?
Sunk cost.
Sunk cost.
Yeah.
Thank you for going with that and understanding. The sunk cost bias. How many times do we have that piece where we're trying to save something because we think, or that we're trying to treasure something maybe? I don't know. That's why I appreciated the story of the girl that was getting married with her manager. Because I think it may be more realistic where you get to that point where you have to say no, but the no isn't the gut reaction. Does that make sense? And maybe it needs to be. That's probably.
What did you think? What did you think of? Actually, you know what? Barbara said something here.
Sorry.
No, I'll throw it back in. It was a little bit ago. She's mentioned I kept thinking about the two patterns in chapter 10, playing politics. So winning the attention of one manager, the principal, and it's all good. Too many disparate activities. Her follow-up comment to that is that we see these patterns all the time in EDU. How does this affect the school's big picture? And that's one half of something that I've been thinking about. The other half, the other way that I was thinking about it is, okay, so seeing the patterns and the patterns happen in cycles, and you know what's the sort of like ongoing, almost like diffused effect of that. But again, you know, how often do we have the people that are observing these patterns? How often are they saying no or stop or we shouldn't move forward with this? It gets me thinking about that, and it might have been what you were talking about, Tina, but that idea of I forget what his jargon is. Oh, the endowment effect. Is it the endowment effect? That idea that
yes,
that we should keep doing it because we've invested in it. And that occurs to me a lot as sometimes I listen to professional development, or I sort of watch how we kind of move through the day in professional in the like how we're sort of growing our learning as educators in school. Like I get that we're building on tradition, we're building on innovation, we're building on student-centered everything. But I also observe the whole, like, just a really hungry drive without people saying it too often, but we got to keep doing this because we have been doing it like this. Like, we've invested a lot in this approach. I was thinking about this a little bit today because we had our literacy test OSSLT training at school. And I always think about that as almost like the ultimate litmus for how standardized is our training going to become for the standardized test? And can it even be tweaked even more? I'm always fascinated because I don't know, how long have we had the OSSLT? How long have we had that in Ontario now? 7, 8 years?
Seems right. Yeah.
Something?
I think maybe a little bit longer than that, actually.
A little bit longer? I'm always fascinated when some little tweak happens and the belief that it's going to make things a little bit better. But what's funny is that, you know, at the heart of it, you have to be on board with kind of believing that the OSSLT is necessary in order to fully appreciate the little tweaks that you're doing on the OSSLT. Do you know what I mean? Like, to really go, wow, yeah, that's going to make the day a lot better. You kind of go, wait a second. I don't know if philosophically I even agree with it. So yeah, I like what Barbara's sort of touching on here, only because there's a whole lot of things that come up in patterns. But I think no one's in the group, I guess. Maybe individuals, they're going and they're saying stuff to people, but people aren't really talking out loud about that kind of stuff, I don't think.
And I think that relates a little bit even to like, so he sort of had a lot of different traps, like this whole status quo bias. Like, do we continue to do something simply because we've always done it? And I think about, oh, are there certain things in the classroom where I'm like, I'm just doing them because it's worked and I've always done it. And yeah, that's the reason I keep on doing it.
Imagine saying that. Imagine saying, like, just for a second, imagine saying that. You know, well, you just did, but I mean, imagine saying that, you know, in a staff meeting or in a department team meeting. This is a really good idea. We should keep doing.
Yeah, I was like, there are so many things I'm sure that people are doing just because they've always done it, right? Like
we should totally keep doing this because we do this every year. We totally should. Don't you think? Don't you think we should totally keep doing this? I like this pause. It's a good pause.
I may be guilty of that, but yeah.
I did not like, this might be a derailment. I didn't appreciate his inclusion of Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
I thought that was a weird outlier in the actual kind of narrative.
I'm sorry, that and Rosa Parks. I'm sorry.
I thought it was like the equivalent of clickbait. Like it was sort of like, I don't know, you know, for him to sort of say that, you know, Nelson Mandela being in jail for whatever it was, 27 years, you know, the dude made the best of his time. I'm just like, really? And it's such a small piece. It's like a paragraph in this book. And I'm like, dude, come on. Like the Rosa Parks as well. But Rosa Parks was given a little bit more leg room to kind of stretch that story out. But then
I felt like it was, to your point, clickbait.
Yeah, patronizing kind of. Because part of it was the dude was incarcerated,
but this is still important to say no to things, and you're kind of like, what?
But I mean, he does say it. Everything was taken from him. I don't think that's because it's like everything was taken from him, so he realized the importance of essentialism. No, there's racism. Like there's more to it there. Like it just seemed really. Where we're playing with the words, we're not talking about having things stripped of us so we can have an enlightened moment of, essentialism is what works. And I just thought when I read that, I'm like, that wasn't cool.
No.
That wasn't cool. So
I think it's the first time in the book when the stories became social justice-y versus work-life balance, which I know
he moved out of corporate for a second. He moved way out of corporate, like a whole different universe.
And I don't think, and I think that's the struggle maybe that I have with education is I idealize it so much that sometimes some of the comments feel like you're shrinking down big ideas, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Like you're trying to distill it too much.
But there is some truth when he said, if anything's important, it's about condensing it to the as clearly and concisely as possible. I guess it's like owning a message. I don't know what it is, but like you said, something didn't sit just right.
It gets me thinking about, so right now I'm wrapping up my guidance specialist, and the big final task that we have to do is a gap analysis based on creating pathways for success. And there's sort of 15 or 17 points in the design of a career life pathways programming that every school should be going through. So we've got these kind of generalized look fors that we are laying against our school in analyzing whether or not it's not really, sometimes, or consistently, and then sort of kind of putting a smart plan together as to how you would enhance it or get it moving. And it's funny, the very first thing, one of the first points talks about this advocacy committee that's supposed to be community partners, parents, admin, student success can be in there, guidance, like it's all these sort of pieces. And that sort of diffused statement in the ministry documents is distilled down to a very simple statement, which is have a meeting, set a schedule, have a meeting. And it brings to mind that challenge sometimes to say, like I called it up here, something about stop wordsmithing and start deciding. And yeah, I think that was sort of playing with the mission statements. I don't know what chapter that pops in, but we were trying to align the 3 mission statements with the 3 companies and which ones were very, very specific. And it went further into the Martha Lane Fox, when she was setting about her sort of mission, based on what the Prime Minister, British Prime Minister, she was brought in as their digital consultant. It says here the digital champion, and she said basically flat out, like her essential intent, whether it was branded that way, I don't think so, is to get everyone in the UK online by the end of 2012. Boom. Essentialism can be complex, but that cuts right to the heart of intent. We're going to make this happen. We're going to have everybody online by 2012. And it's always funny to sort of, earlier in the chapters, it talks about without being clear on the intent, we tend to be wasteful. We tend to be unmotivated. We tend to sort of have a little bit of a sense of loss. I don't know, those are somehow counterpoints to growth mindset-y, creative, liberated. I don't know. They kind of balance together, eh? But again, I go back to thinking about this final task that I'm putting together. And it's the sort of task that makes me wonder why I'm the one coming up with this idea. Have a meeting. Like I'm building a SMART goal so these different constituents can have a meeting. And I'm looking at this as I'm writing it, and it's not existent in the context that I'm analyzing. And I'm like, have the meeting, right? And so it's a funny, I'm sort of in this funny space. And this is sometimes what AQs are. You get to sort of, you get in a space where you don't know if it's your experience or what you read. It's kind of kaleidoscopic. Did I do this? Did I read this somewhere? I'm going to put it together with a plan. But I find it's interesting. There's a whole lot of open space here that I feel like I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time isolating essential intent in what I'm putting together. Like it's just so out there. I don't know if that's a necessary quality of AQs, but Zita, you could comment on that.
I left the magazine upstairs. I like that sort of 2x2 matrix though, because I think that helps to clarify, at least for me, sort of how essential intent is different from like your vision and mission, which I think sometimes vision and mission, I'm like, oh my goodness, that is like, it's super vague for me.
But do you feel like essential intent is possible because people have values and vision and mission?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? Like I almost, and I do believe he mentions it once or twice that that they have a place. But yeah, like I think those other 3 pieces make the essential intent possible.
Barbara touches on it a little bit. She's saying, how would schools benefit if we became more essentialists? If the school leadership could determine the school's essential intent? I really feel for, I feel for admin. I really do. I feel for, not admin. I feel for the humans that are in the role of admin, because I always think to myself, at what point are they doing or creating the thing that they went into admin for? And even if they went into administration because they wanted to run a school, like let's say it's really pedantic, like just straight up, I want to run a school. It's pretty much what they give you as soon as they hand you the keys. Like you could be the person that's running the school. Even I think with that very clear, vague kind of task, so much of what you do isn't necessarily directly running the school. Like there's sort of pieces that are in motion that you're responsible for, but you're not really running the school per se. But I asked an administrator one time that question. I said, have you started to work on the thing that inspired you to become an administrator in the first place? Like, are you in that space? And this was 2 years in, and they said, no, I haven't gotten to it yet. Like, I haven't got to that essential piece. So, you know, Barbara's comment here is, how would the school benefit if we became more essentialist, if the school leadership could determine the school's essential intent? That would be a really interesting conversation to hear, because even if you could get to the principal's essential intent, the school's essential intent is a far more organic and loose thing, right? Because it's dependent on so many little moving pieces.
For sure.
And so I had put out, along with our little hashtag, this essential schools. I think I had sent it to you guys.
Yeah.
And so I think I was really intrigued by it, because they have these 10 core principles, one of which is less is more. And so they look at depth over coverage. And the way that they go about, students are sort of roughly grade 7 and 8 is Division 1, which is like, you know, they're developing some certain basic skills, and then like Division 2 is roughly 9 and 10, and then Division 3 is 11 and 12, and they have to do, there's like some showcase or demonstration or something that happens as their final assessment. And then they can move forward to the next division. And so I was really interested in it because it sort of takes a lot of the things that I was thinking about and saying, does every single kid in grade 7 need to know about landforms in geography? Or is there something that we can explore that's maybe a little bit more broad, but that is essential, you know? Yeah.
Well, we've completely, I think, stepped away trying to identify what we believe is essential in EDU. Like, I don't think either one of us three are willing, or not willing, but I don't think we've kind of, I don't think we're going to get to that.
And I don't think that's the goal either.
No, but I'm just, it's sort of like, even to the agenda that is set. So, I mean, Tina, you said the moral imperative. That's, I mean, if we take the ministry expectation for what school should be as the most top-down criteria, and then somewhere along the line we inject moral imperative, and I don't know where that exists, depending on the government in power. That can be kind of rule of law above them, or sometimes it can flow from them down to where we are in the front lines, let's say. And then you make it to the front lines, and then you have the almost, I'll say kaleidoscopic, or just like that Plinko kind of effect of what does it look like when the ministry expectations filter down to school level, a little bit like what you're saying, Catherine, and then we start to interpret what is important about it, how do we deliver it, how do we create it, how do we innovate within it. So you have all this really dynamic fizzing going on at the school level. But I start to wonder about, you know, are we able to distinguish between what you're suggesting, like whether or not a kid should, you know, pursue landforms, and, you know, are we able to distinguish a value to that pursuit? Like, are we able to say, because I feel like where do we go to say that if we're not able to all establish individual intent for what's essential in school, because we're bound together by the collective agreements, whether it's the moral intent or the expectations, like we're bound together with so many nets. So to make the decision that maybe a kid doesn't necessarily have to pursue that, I'm waiting for someone to kind of break that conversation open, because I don't know if it makes me think of Shauna Pollock, who opened up Blue Sky School, and she in conversation with her, she's articulated that. She said, yeah, I get it, there's ministry expectations, but I'm paraphrasing here, Shauna, don't crush me. Here's what I heard. Yeah, I get there's ministry expectations, but I'm building a school here. And I kind of go, that's kind of profound. So you're going to sort of design the school based on what your intent, your essential intent is, and you're going to make the system work for you. Now, I haven't seen what she's designed since, but that was part of what she was looking for. And to be able to say, are landforms really? Is the landforms really where we need to go? But we should have tagged her. We should have tagged her, see if she wanted to talk with us.
But do you think that sometimes we take on the responsibility or the belief that the curriculum expectations are our essential intent as educators versus our essential intent is to educate learners? Like, there's a lot of front matter that we don't seem to worry about missing in those curriculum documents right now, which who knows where they'll end up. There's a lot of ideas there that we are okay to let go of. And I'm not saying to let go of the curriculum. It's our legal responsibility.
Yeah, I know.
To make sure.
Rebel.
No one's saying don't do what you have to do. But I think there's still that idea of the ministry has said time and time again in the past. Again, who knows what changes will come. But in the past, that we're only obligated to the overall expectations. Yeah. But as a field, we like the checklist. And I think sometimes does that come from us not really having a clear essential intent about why we're in education?
I think that's that other thing that I mentioned about the sort of creativity and the growth mindset. Like, on one hand, the book would say without clear intent, you're not necessarily being as productive as you could be. You're going to have waste. You're going to have things. There's a clear negative or almost deleterious effect to not having essential intent. The counter side, which I think is what you're sort of talking about. So if we have the expectations as the clear essential intent, it sounds like you're talking about the creative side of it, though. Like, so what about that inspired interpretation of those expectations? How do we nurture both sides like that? I'm trying to think of someone that I've met so far that seems to be able to kind of ninja step between both camps of clear articulation of expectations, but is just like this crazy out there thinker. I don't know if I've met someone that can dance effectively in both camps.
I think that's why kindergarten teachers rock. But that's a different... but I think the struggle I have there is that when our essential intent becomes a curriculum, our work becomes like children are in the service of curriculum versus curriculum being in the service of kids. And I'll always remember Rowan, and he probably doesn't even remember saying this, but I remember having a chat with him where he said curriculum really is a element of equity. And that's always stuck with me because when I get frustrated, I try to go back to that.
Sorry, who said that?
Rowan Lee.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Smart guy. Always all good smart things come from him. But yeah, I guess that's what I struggle with. When our intent in education is to follow, like, I don't know. If that's our intent, there's definitely other pieces that come to mind. That clearly and precisely and concisely piece. If we wrote curriculum with an essentialist mindset, would we have clearer, more concise understanding so that as educators, we each could jump on the vision versus trying to sort through it? If it was clear, could we see every kid seeing value in that instead of questioning whether they need to do stem and leaf graphs in grade 4, which I still haven't done in my life.
Can I put something to you too?
Sure.
So it's a very, this is a broad reaching survey. So all three of us.
Yeah. really great sample, representative samples.
Hold up a sec. I'm gonna make a Google form, and then you can.
You really are.
Yeah. So do you believe that if an instructor, if a teacher were to solely use expectations to drive their teaching solely to the letter, is that enough? Is that enough for a teacher to solely follow the expectations to the letter? I'm imagining it's possible. Not going to say it's good or bad, but is it enough for our students and student success?
But it's how you define student success. Because we've had many.
Don't lawyer me. You've completely stepped away. Do you believe? Do you believe that the expectations as set out by the ministry are enough to satisfy students?
Expectations or the document? Because I think that's where we can get. Because to me, I define success as creating lifelong learners. Because in today's world, you can't really.
Do the expectations give clear? Do the expectations give a clear method to achieve that?
If we look slowly at the expectations, I don't think so. But again, those expectations are grounded in a document that does have some really great front matter that does address it.
And I think also I sort of think about the curriculum as part of a how-to and like a plan. But I think that if you don't have, for example, a relationship with your students, you can be an excellent deliverer of, I don't like that term. You can be excellent in knowing the curriculum and being able to lay out the expectations, but I don't think that you laying out the expectations necessarily equates to learning.
I wonder if there'd be some educators that would argue that point. Say, no, I'm following the ministry expectations. The students will learn. There's some really, I mean, sometimes when I'm following some of the conversations, mostly in the Twitter sphere, there's the kind of like the branding of back to basics ideation as far as what classroom should look like. And in a lot of ways that pulls away from the sidecar documents that you're talking about, Tina. Like it does bring it right back to what is in the expectations for that course. And I don't have a side either way. I enjoy hearing some of the back to basics only so much to see how they define basics and what's in that toolkit. Sometimes it really is, they're the emotionality, it's couched in emotionality that is, they've been hurt before. So it's not even anything that's actually actionable. It's just a statement of fact that somehow, their child is not getting a fair shake at school, or they feel like Canadians are not competitive in the workforce, but we need to get back to basics. So it's kind of abstract and euphemistic. But there are some individuals that their idea of back to basics are things that have been pulled from the education system. And the reason that this comes to mind is because of that there's the mention here of the reverse prototyping. Is it reverse prototyping? Reverse pilot, where you actually test the efficacy of a system by removing elements, not by evolving and adding to it. And I like that thought for a little bit of a thought experiment, that idea, because again, where we sort of started, that idea of scarcity. So how do we reduce or pull back some items that might need to could be repurposed or put in a different place? And I don't have the scope to pull out anything specific. I don't have a thing where I'm like, yeah, we totally need to get rid of that one thing, OSSLT. It doesn't need, we don't have to, we don't have to sort of call anybody out, EQAO, for things that might not necessarily be in the direct lens of essentialism. But I like that idea. So if someone is saying back to basics, do you hear essentialism in that?
I don't.
I think it's because when you come back to our essential intent, or I guess the values, maybe it's more values and vision and mission.
And then something I'm thinking about is like, if it depends on what's the end goal of education also.
Yeah.
Is it like, is it to create competent workers, or is it to create, thinkers? Is it to create human beings who are compassionate? Like there's so much.
I guess, and both of those, I don't know if either of those are served by back to basic conversations. Right? It's our assumption that, and back to basics again, if we have folks, like, curriculum is mandatory, can't not do it. So just to be clear.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, exactly. I can put that in post-production if you want.
There was somebody once that wanted to chat about coding and what could we take out to do coding. So that's why it's always fresh in my mind. I'm like, you can't, it's about fine-tuning or finding where the pieces fit. I think that's why I like the editor conversation about what to take out, but also what to leave in, and the cutting. Anyways, but I don't know if the back to basics conversation is the same as let's revisit our document. And again, the expectations are one part of a comprehensive document that addresses differentiation, inquiry-based learning, a variety of ways of knowing. Is that, like, I think with our conversation, so as Catherine and I were saying, we're gonna, I think part of it comes back down to what you think the purpose of education is, but also how much you feel you have control. And maybe that's part of the essentialist piece.
Yeah, that's
true. That we let society say what our responsibility is, or we feel we have a responsibility to put sides versus coming up with our own intent.
What if the reverse pilot is that we need to get rid of the expectations?
But that's why I go back to Rowan's point when he said that expectations are a sense of there's a, and he probably doesn't remember this or can say it much better than I did. I'm blabbering on right now, but he said it's an element of equity that we believe all our learners in Ontario, and I think it can be re-envisioned. I don't think, to your point, Catherine, about the essential schools, which look super cool, does it need to be yearly? Does it need to be 5 pages of bulleted lists? Does it need to be content? Can it be more skills-based? I don't know. I think there's, and that again gets to the creative outside the box. Maybe that's not essential. It's not measurable. That's what I worried about with that story. That's this many % of people will be online. I don't know if I've ever used an assessment tool like that. I may be in trouble.
And I also feel like with a lot of these things that are deemed essential is like, it won't work if in a school everybody has their own essential intent and they're all working towards their own essential intent, because then you're working by yourself. And I think that's a piece that is maybe a little bit, it adds a level of complexity to this, is that everybody has some of their own ideas, their own philosophies on what the purpose is of education and how we go about doing that. And the reality is, we are working in a school, and we are, for most of us, not the sole teacher of our students. And I think we need to be collaborating, and we need to be, having these discussions within our schools so that we can work together more effectively.
It brings to mind, I have been in conversations where I wasn't using the language of this book, but where I was in the space of kind of decoding what the essential intent was by asking. I remember one time in particular, asking a question when we were looking to, it was an in-school team meeting, and it just occurred to me so fully that what we were talking about was not going in the right direction. So I asked the group, is curriculum really what's going to help this child? And because a lot of the structures that were being suggested was, well, let's reduce the schedule. Maybe we can get, the child could work out of the student success room. We can get them maybe doing some D2L, and every single supportive and therapeutic suggestion was pursuing the completion of curriculum. It wasn't, and I just had a moment, I'm like, I don't think we're really seeing the kid here. So it's not curriculum that this kid needs. And it rattled the table because, and this is part of a larger conversation, I think. Are we equipped with the language to discuss something like this? The language of looking at essentialism within school is a bit of a foreign language. Because I think that when we inevitably talk about it, it's dangerously close to saying we're not going to do our job. Like, because what you're going to have things pulled out that people, again, have been doing for a while. There's been money put to it. There's been lots of documentation to it. I think that's why I also asked about whether or not expectations are necessary. Like, do we have enough other documentation to suggest what we should be doing with modern learning, that we don't necessarily need expectations as our core driver for courses anymore? I think that's a better question that I wanted to ask. But in the same way, asking the questions that put us at the edge of not knowing what to say next, like, is the curriculum the thing that this kid needs, puts us in a space not only to understand the box that we're in, the essential flag that we've planted in the ground without even seeing it. Because with this kid, the whole table kind of sputtered for a second and didn't really know what to say next. And they kind of ignored me and went on, okay, so we all good? And I'm like, no, but okay. Like, and I've been in a couple of spaces like that where the whole thing that's being talked about is not what's going on in front of us. And, I'll continue to sort of rep those moments. I enjoy those moments because it feels like being the outlier is the space that we need to spend more time in. That's just a little bit my sort of advocacy heart, but it was a funny moment, because curriculum, I felt, wasn't the thing, yet everybody at the table felt like that's what we should be moving forward to, and asking what else could we do, which I didn't ask directly. I just said, is curriculum what we should be focused on? There was no answer. And I realized the other people around the table didn't have a language to speak to what I was observing.
Such a deep line to end our
we can leave there for sure.
Barb had a question here, but it didn't seem like a good time to bring it up till now. So she just asked, are we finishing
the book for the next meeting?
Is that the last one? Did I miss any of her other comments? Thanks for this week's banter and ideas. Signing off for tonight. Are you going to try to finish the book for the next meeting?
Yeah, we can. What is it? Is it part 4, the end?
Yeah.
I'm good to give it a go if you want.
I'm down.
You down with that?
We got March break, guys.
So we go March break and then the Monday following March break?
Yep.
Yep.
This book's tough, eh? This book hasn't gotten easier.
No. I think it's actually gotten me more confused. And I think also I just finished reading Deep Work by Cal Newport. And that has gotten me thinking about a whole lot of other stuff too. And remember how at the very beginning you said this whole Think Week, you're like, I've heard this so many times. And I was like, I've never heard it. And now I've heard it like 5 times.
Gates is
in the last week. Yeah.
That's cool. I would actually like to meet someone IRL that's doing that. I would love that. And is holding that line and saying, I need it. I would love to meet someone. And it's not like they're saying, yeah, I just took 4 sick days in a row. It was wonderful.
Do you think that summer vacation is like, do you think that there are people who use summer vacation very intentionally as a think time?
Yes. Yep. Yep.
I can't say I do, but sure.
I think somebody
probably has mastered it.
But like, yeah.
definitely amongst other things, but I think that's also like I'm not thinking like refreshment. I'm thinking further exploration. Like you just have space to stretch your legs. So I think definitely people do that. Are either one of you going to read this book again?
No.
I was curious about that. Is this going to be one that you feel like you need? Well, or is it going to stay? So Zita, did you buy a copy or are you still using your buddies?
No, it's still my buddies. Although I almost bought the Kindle version today.
Okay. I have a physical copy. And I think I may come back to certain things. I don't think I will read the book in its entirety again.
I'm going to keep the notes. I did take your strategy though. I'm starting to do chapter summary notes.
Oh,
because originally I did this to like draw arrows, and that did me no favor because I couldn't remember what I was drawing the arrows to.
I have so many of those. This is really important, arrow, but the sticky is now in like my journal. I'm like, what was that pointing at?
So, and then I think I went to like way too many notes for the last section. So like my white sticky notes are like chock full of stuff, and then this week they're getting more sparse. And I don't know if it's just because I don't want to deal with the topics that they're telling me. Maybe that was
the book the book's not getting kinder. I actually find it's starting to get more. You know what? The Mandela story was a turning point. I think there was something shifts in the book that kind of I don't know. It's
losing its essentialism.
It could be. There could be something about that.
I just like when you talked, and especially that section on the editor. How, as an editor, would you not have seen? Like, to me, I think the Nelson Mandela story definitely stood out, but the Rosa Parks one hit me. And Rosa Parks happened before Nelson Mandela. Maybe that's why that didn't shock me as much. But it just was like, as an editor, and you're like, one of your points is to be an editor and to cut what's unnecessary. I don't know. Just, I think there was some extra words in that chapter. I feel like it could have been one chapter with the 4 parts.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Because maybe I'm just not wanting to deal with the issues. I need to go back to the first chapter where the last part where it talked about sleeping and having a life and stuff like that.
I think maybe it might be. I think the last chunk might be slightly fun.
Oh yeah.
Well, only because I was just kind of looking back through it, and so my notes. It's the call to action, right?
Okay,
and,
cool.
And it was something that I was going to ask you at some point in the middle here, but just considering if there's anything in this that is really sparking you up to give a test drive. So maybe when we land in the execute, which I think is I don't know what chapter it is, but whatever it is, it's the start.
14.
It's that sort of, it's the transition between chapter 14 and 15. But I like that idea of sort of having a little bit of a pants kick and saying, okay, what is it that we're going to steal from this book and kind of go bug people with? I read this amazing book on essentialism. Can I tell you about it? Right? In the staff meetings, you're like, hey, this totally reminds me of this thing that I read in Essentialism. It's in a podcast. You want to hear it? Yeah, just that unabashed marketing.
There you go.
The last chapter is B, the Essentialist Life. So
no pressure.
I am preparing myself for that
no
particular chapter.
So this is big, eh? So that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It is big.
And flow and focus and be okay, let's do it.
Yeah. I think we need to just do it.
60 pages, we can do this?
Yeah.
Okay. No, sorry. 70 pages. In very small font. Okay. It was great seeing you two again.
Alrighty. Have a good night, guys.
Part 4. Let's see if we can boost Barbara. We got to find a way. Even if we have to shift, if you want to shift a little bit earlier, just think about it, just to see if we can get Barbara online with us.
You're gonna have to. I think she already left for tonight, so we'll have to send her a personal invite there.
You know what I'll do? Here's what I'm gonna do. The link that I send to her.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send her the live link.
She won't like that.
So she clicks on it and she's like, what's going on? Hey, Barbara, how's it going?
And we're live.
That's right. In 3, 2, 1. All right. Have a blast. Enjoy your March breaks, you two. Have fun. Eat something, play something. Say goodnight to your son for me if he's still sitting there.
He's waiting. He's in bed now.
He's not waiting at the top of the...
It's funny because I have the headphones in, so I can't hear, but I feel like you guys probably hear all his little whispers like,
Mama. Yeah. No, that was awesome. All right. Take care of you and yours, and we'll chat soon.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.